Hi class, today we'll be talking about single case studies, quasi experiments, and developmental research designs. So let's go ahead and get started with our chapter today. All right, so in this chapter, we're going to kind of go over a couple of different study designs. The first type of study design is a single case experimental design. Now, this is typically done when we have a case study, right? So historically, we may have done these types of research in terms of behavioral analysis. And while we don't typically see it often, it is a perfectly valid research design. And part of it is because we don't do that many case studies anymore. If we're going to be devoting the resources to a research study, we typically are collecting data on a large number of participants. So where did these single case experiments come from? Well, we needed to sort of have some kind of experimental manipulation, if you will, and we wanted to be able to do so with one participant. And so how do we do this? Well, we have to have a baseline understanding of behavior. So we take that sort of baseline assessment. And then after that, we want to see if there's a change in our behavior as a result of the introduction of our manipulation. So this could be some kind of intervention. And then we go back and we see if there's been a change. Now, part of the problem is that there could be something else that is accounting for the change. And so what do we do if that's the case, right? So we could collect baseline data and then we could give this change, but then how do we really know if it's working? And so from this, we came up with a design called a reversal design, which is a withdrawal of my treatment. You may have also heard of this as an ABA design. And this is very often used as kind of a treatment. So your A corresponds with the baseline. So we have a baseline measure, and then we give the treatment, and then we collect baseline again. So it might look something like this, where you can take a look and you see we've got our baseline, and then we take a look at our treatment, and you start to see that there's an improvement, right? We have an increase in the number of correct homework problems. And then when we remove that treatment, what we see is a drop in our baseline again. Okay, so kind of looking at this in a little bit greater detail, we can also have a multiple baseline design. So let's say that we have a research study. And as you saw here, we gave the baseline, we gave the treatment, and then, we take a look at the baseline again. But we can also, let's say that we get into a position where withdrawing the treatment can be really problematic. Maybe it might even be unethical for us to do so. What can we do then? Well, in these types of studies, we actually can introduce our manipulation at different periods of time to see if we get a very similar change across different individuals. So here you can see in our first experiment, we've got our baseline. We then give our treatment after so many days, right? Here we have baseline, we collect baseline data just a little bit longer and then give the treatment much later. And then in our last example, we take baseline data for an extended period of time and then only give our treatment kind of close to the end in terms of weeks, right? So here you've got something like maybe 3.5 weeks. In your next example, you have probably something like 6.5 weeks. And then in our third in our third graph down here, we have about 9.5 weeks. And so each of these are different subjects. Now, remember, it might be unethical for me to withdraw my treatment from a person, especially if it's working, right? So what we can do is we take these different participants and then we vary when in the trial we give them, or when in the experiment we give them the treatment. And what you kind of see across the board is there seems to be smoking cessation, so there seems to be a decrease in the number of cigarettes that are being smoked, except when we get over here, we start to see sort of a peak again. So perhaps there's something to suggest that maybe starting it earlier could see some improvement. I mean, if we look here, there was a little bit of a peak before we saw it go down. There was a little bit of a peak before we saw it go down. So perhaps if we continue this, we might see a different picture. By doing a design in this way, we're actually able to take a look at our data points, and we can say with a pretty good degree of certainty that our treatment is working, right? Because we're varying the time frame in which we are giving each of the participants the treatment.